The other day, I made a post questioning whether the FBA movement actually makes sense for Black African Americans. And they actually came for me in the comments. So many people were like, "What are you? Where are you from? Da 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 da." Listen, that is hilarious because actually, on both sides of my family, we are so foundational. In fact, that it has been documented by state governments. People have done research on us. So, no, can't tell by looking on the face. I don't know if it's my hair or what, but let's get into it.
African Americans are starting to act like white people, specifically being xenophobic and this grudge we have against other black immigrants. I understand this coming out of frustration and fear of being displaced, but we are not going anywhere. And clapping for somebody else does not dim our shine. We have been and will probably continue to be the dominant or majority group, black group in this country for years to come. And oftentimes, other black immigrants tend to assimilate into our culture by like the second generation. So the discourse about there not being enough black American representation in New York or in the beauty industry is irrelevant. Remember, it was our hard work, our progression that even allowed for not just black immigrants, but all immigrants to be able to come here and find even a smidge of the success that they do. So when you see a Nigerian influencer, a Haitian influencer, big up her, but also remember to big up us too, because we still here.
How y'all doing? My name is Raekwon Diamond Kamau, and I've been hearing a lot online about foundational Black Americans versus African immigrants that come here to America and settle and become African Americans. Now, myself personally, I don't have a problem with it because this is the truth. The only difference between foundational Black Americans and African immigrants is we were here longer. That's the only difference. But we are from Africa, the same as they are from Africa. You see, some blacks have this ideal that because our cultures are different, we cannot be put in the same category. Sorry, that's hogwash. That's bull. Okay? You see, black does not describe our culture, it describes our race. If you are a melanated person across the world, you're considered black. And they don't care what country you're from. I'm sorry, this is just the truth. They don't care where you're from. You're black, okay? Regardless if you're from Africa or anywhere else where your skin just happen to be melanated, they see you, they go black. Okay? So black does not describe our culture. American describes our culture. African describes our ancestry or where our bloodline is from. Okay? And unfortunately, it appears that out of all the different groups on this planet, we're the only ones that have a problem with it. Okay? Asian American culture is not the same as Chinese, Korean, or Japanese culture. It's not the same. But do you hear Asian Americans claim or deny or run from the fact that they're Asian? No, they don't. They're Asian American, and they're cool with it. You definitely don't see white people whose culture is definitely different from European culture. White American culture is not the same as European culture. Very different. But you don't hear white Americans being ashamed of their European culture. We just have a problem with it. I don't. As a matter of fact, my family got rid of their slave names and took back African last names. That's why my last name is now Kamau. And I'm so proud of my African last name. It's from Kenya. I love it. So, look, just know this. The only difference between African immigrants and us is that we were here longer. Only difference, but we're all still from Africa, making us all African American. And I'm cool with that. In the meanwhile, I know some of you might have some problem with it. I really don't care. But please, take care of yourselves and start loving one another.
The FBA people, I'm starting to think y'all are psychotic because y'all are also Trump supporters and Trump voters too. Because he's telling me that I don't look Black American. I am African, even though I'm telling him that I am Black American, African American. My grandparents go back multiple generations, were here. My grandmother said that we were Blackfoot Indian. However, when I did my ancestry DNA results, No native anything came up in my blood. I have 4% of Irish and Italian mixed together. And I'm happy about that. So that means the women in my family was not raped repeatedly over multiple generations. So I am proudly a dark skinned African American woman. I am a descendant of slaves. You cannot be that, but I am. You do not tell me what and who I am. Y'all are insane. And so you mentioned I had on a filter. Okay, so the filter is off. Now what?
Hello and what's up, good people? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you're doing great today from wherever you're watching this video from. In some of my recent videos, we were trying to understand or question rather this concept of FBA, Foundational Black Americans. Maybe for myself, out of curiosity, and maybe for someone else, so they can just understand further what is this exactly, and what are the basis of this argument. Yeah. So foundational FBA, foundational Black Americans, are Americans, or rather Black people who are now claiming some sort of nativity or want to be recognized kind of for some as indigenous to the Americas. While many people have, obviously had a lot to say about it and opinions, because of course we do have opinions and we're all entitled to our opinions. I came across this Black sister, or this African American sister, who, really has something to tell us about the same. And I want us to continue to listen to her and learn from it. And then we might as well, add something right at the end. So let's watch.
To my fellow African Americans, why are we even considering embracing the concept of foundational Black American? It doesn't make any sense. First thing is, why do we assume that the outer world would be able to tell the difference between an African American and an African? I mean, honestly, maybe some of us would like to think we look a lot different, but trust me, I've been to West Africa and you'd be surprised you'll see everybody's cousin over there. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have a lot of other mixtures. We probably, myself, for instance, I am quite a mixture of different types of West African. Then I have some European thrown in there. A lot of us do have that. But we are embracing a concept in an attempt to say that we're different from another group of people. Okay. When in fact, I think it's well known that for a lot of white people, they can't tell us apart at all. Now, I understand wanting to say, this is our culture and that's their culture. But, then again, I kind of don't understand that because we have so much of our culture that actually comes from West Africa. And please believe me, I'm an anthropologist. I've been over to West Africa, and one of the most interesting things was seeing things that we do that we literally got from there. Some of the things we do, they are literally doing the same thing. Okay. So we create a concept that says, hey, we're different. We want you to make a difference. And then they're going so far as to put this on the census. So for me, I stop and think, well, why would we create a system that is designed to have the larger group have to come into our group and pick out who's who and what's what? Why would we do that? We are basically opening ourselves up to a lot of scrutiny. And we see what's happening now. I mean, basically, what makes us think that they're going to come in and only take Africans if that's what they decide to do? Or this doesn't make any sense, okay? Bottom line is we should stick together as a group. At least that way, we won't allow people to come into our community and start poking and prodding around. That is the last thing that we need because, like I said, many of us would get caught up in a movement like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that we should try to kick anybody out here. I'm totally not xenophobic. But, I mean, that's just one of the issues I see with it. So bottom line, to the outer group, we don't look that much different. And a lot of times they can't tell us apart one from another. And if we really think that if a movement gets started to start, taking people out of here, deciding who should stay, who should go, there's no way to tell that. I mean, half of us don't even carry our driver's license and our IDs around. So for me, I think we'll have more power keeping our group together if we want to discuss this amongst ourselves, but going so far as to put all this on the census, that's going to be a problem. African Americans and Africans each have things that the other one wants. So let's talk about it. Okay. So I think I am African American, first of all. I have to say that because people are coming with me. I don't know. Maybe I'm not manifesting my phenotype, but I am African American. So let me just position myself in that. Do I know a lot about Africa? Have I done work over there? Do I know people from all over the continent and specifics about certain cultures? Yes, but I'm African American. Boom. That's that. So let me just talk to my people first. African Americans. So I think a lot of us, when we think about Africans, and some of us, not me, we get nervous about them taking our space, and then we start talking about them taking over businesses and taking over spots in school, and so we start feeling this thing where we're like, well, we're going to be edged out, and we were here first, and we're doing this. Okay, but let's look at what is underneath this. So a lot of times, I think a lot of us get caught on the business thing. Okay, how are they coming over here doing this? And what we got to remember is no one is giving them anything. I know what people like to say, but when immigrants come over here, they don't have some basic things that we have. Okay, they cannot get educational scholarships. They can't get student loans. They can't get things like housing. They have to have all their papers in order. And a lot of times they're coming from away from their own families, so they have to be very independent. So I just want to put out there, we have to stop thinking that society is helping them and that they're getting all of these things and they're taking things from us, because as American citizens, we have rights to certain things that they just don't have. Okay, so with that in mind, then let's really look at it. I mean, like when you're talking businesses, well, how do they do it? What I want to say is, first of all, when you're an immigrant, any type of immigrant, you come over here with an agenda. If we went and moved to any other place, we'd have an agenda, okay? And we'd have to work very hard at it because we don't have the things that we have back home, okay? So when immigrants come over, I do feel that a lot of times they're more pointed. For some of us, it's there. The education's there. So, we'll go back to school if we want to, and we know we can get things, but they don't. Okay, so they do a lot of times have that fire, and that's not just African immigrants, that's any immigrant that's coming over here, okay? But the other thing they have in a lot of communities that African Americans don't have is we don't commonly practice pooling our capital. Okay, we don't even do that. And actually, let's take a step back. Around the world, and I've said it before, we're primarily consumers, okay? So we live in a capitalist society, so there are the makers of the products, the producers, and the consumers. So primarily, we're the ones that consume what everybody else is selling. And even a lot of times if we have ideas, we have to take it to them to produce it. So when it comes to capital, we're buying. We're never selling, and I don't think a lot of us realize that. But when Africans come over here, they simply understand capitalism. Now, it's not like we can't understand capitalism. I can get into the reasons why we are consumers, big consumers, and what that's all about. But honestly, we can't be mad. They're coming over there here, and they know that this is a capitalist society, and they know that they have to produce a product, get a business if they want to get ahead. And I feel like for so many years, a lot of us, we spent time integrating. Integrating's not bad, but to some extent, integrating means you have the company, I want to get in on that. And that's not bad. We had work to do in that area, but that did not make us good producers. So yes, when Africans come over here, not only do they have a very keen sense of what the society is, and they want to position themselves a lot of times as producers, and also, on the other hand, even in the Caribbean, they have ways of pooling their capital. And that's a system that we might have had it. I think maybe some time ago we've had it, but that's why I feel we're not really getting a lot of the same things. All right. Now, on the African side, I do feel from hearing from people, they come over and they can't understand because there's a lot of things that we take for granted that we have. Number one being education. If you go to a lot of countries, it doesn't even matter if it's a country in Africa. They don't have all these schools in one state. They don't have all these cheaper ways. A lot of times they don't even have universal primary education, which means that in order to go to grade school, you would have to pay for that. So a lot of times, yes, they're coming over and they're kind of looking at us like, you have all this and you're not taking advantage of it. Okay. And there's a lot of factors to that, but I got to admit, it's like to some extent, we do have all this. And when you have things, you kind of get laid back, and that is not how they're coming over. Now, I do feel that the longer they stay, especially when they get impacted by the things that I've talked about in terms of phenotype, and sometimes they come over here thinking they're different too, and they say, wait a minute, over here I'm Black. I'm not just this. They don't really make a difference. Even if I think I'm better than somebody, the wider white society doesn't see that. And I have seen some struggle with not understanding why we're not just taking advantage and taking advantage. There's reasons for that. But at the same time, the longer they stay, they say, whoa, okay, I get it. This is hard. This is hard. It's harder than what I thought. Okay. So I do feel, what can we teach each other? I feel like African Americans can, instead of saying they're taking all this away, number one, we could look and start to learn, how do we pool our capital like Caribbeans and Africans do? The idea that we put in a pot and then somebody gets a house and we spin off instead of acting just as separate entities. I think we could take that from them. And also in terms of education, we've gotten a little lax. I'm back in school again. I'm always getting educated, but come on, it would be natural for us to, because we have so much. And when you have a lot of things, you take it kind of for granted. Okay. And in terms of the Africans, I think on the whole, I think they are coming around, but I think on the whole, maybe there's work to be done. Well, put it like this. When you get here, you may think you're different, but I think the longer they stay, they start to understand. Okay. So those are the things that I think, both of us are looking at each other and we're trying to figure it out. Now, one more thing I will say when it comes to Africans, I do feel like sometimes they don't know this society like we know it. So there's always room, for them to talk to us, because despite what you might think, we've been in this society for 500 years. So bottom line, I feel like we can both learn from each other, but there are some very real things that we need to look at on both sides and realize that, there's a little bit of jealousy, maybe a little bit of envy.
Okay, after listening to this, sister, let's just first agree on, first things first. Our history is very important. A people's history, anyone's history is very important, because once we know our history, then we have our identity, or rather we know our identity. And when we know the past, when we know where we have come from, then probably it would make sense to tell where we are headed. If things change, and then this could be the outcome. And if things remain the same, this could also be the outcome. Now, there's been this pull and push, and between, African Americans and Black Americans, and of course Africans. And so let's talk about it. Some people claim that they do not want to associate with Africa, or kind of denounce Africanness, or rather just want to be recognized as Americans, and that's okay. But personally, will respect that. While other Americans really want to always be attached to their roots, and people have different arguments. Some of the arguments that come up are, we have lived in this country long enough. That's America. We have lived in this country long enough, and now we should just be recognized as Africans. But on the other hand, you'll find other people say, we are proud to always attach ourselves to our roots, which are African. And then there is even other people who say, we Black people are actually indigenous to the Americas, and which somehow, from my perspective, which might not be the most correct, maybe also not very wrong, but I don't really think they're indigenous Black people to the Americas. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but according to some of the studies I have done, in fact, even though we cannot say all Black people found themselves to the Americas through the slave trade, but even those that predate slave trade actually also traveled from the continent of Africa. And that is how the first ever black people got themselves to the Americas. And then came the transatlantic slave trade, which also played a huge role in getting black people to the Americas. So talking about being really indigenous to that land somehow negates, or it defeats the fact that even the earliest of black people to arrive in the Americas found some people there, and they were not the same as those people. So it could kind of look like you are ignoring the fact that there are people who are much more native to that land. Anyway, people have opinions, and we respect everybody's opinion. Now, let's go to these other category of people who are very interesting, who actually are denouncing their Africanness because they feel like there's a lot of tension between Black Americans and Africans, or African Americans and Africans. And I want us to go deep into this. And now, we start from the African side. Now, many Africans or African immigrants go to the United States of America, and they're out there for, to get a living, or to earn a living, or, for the jobs and for the money. And then we have Black Americans who really, I can say that the host to these African immigrants, who now claim that these people come to this country and they do not respect us, and they do not recognize us, and in fact they'd rather stay with the white man than with us. And that is not something I can personally justify, and that really is happening, and it is very sad. But before we really condemn these people, and before we really dismiss everything, can we ask ourselves, how did we get here? And this is why history is very important. In the first place, how did we get here? Now, it will really answer all of the questions when we understand why, in the first place, Africans go to these countries, to America in the first place. Why do they, we're talking about the modern world of today. Why are Africans going to the Americas or to Europe? Now, these people are people who are after the money in most cases. School, of course, and school is to get a job, to get for a better education and a better life. These are people who are going to improve their lives. These are people who, when they left their homes, knew most likely they were going to a foreign land, a white man's land. By the way, many people, if you were to ask many people in Africa, who are the people that live in America, then they would think it is a white man's land. Sadly, because if we don't really question history as it is, then the whitewashed history would mislead us. Now, because now this is a whitewashed history, when many people in the continent of Africa actually think of America as a white man's land. And you will forgive them, because that is what they read in a whitewashed system of education. Now, when these people are leaving the continent and are going to a strange land, a white man's land, they're not going to any of their relatives. They are made to understand that in the very first beginning. And they're out there simply for the money before they can return back home. And then this is what happens again. With this capitalistic kind of society we live in today, we know who controls the money. We know who has the money. It is the palm colored. It's the white people who have the money. And if I went to a place looking for something, I would most likely try to attach myself to the person that has that very same thing that I'm looking for. And that is why you'd find some Black Americans now accusing these people of being more closer to the white people than to their fellow Black people. Because you'd find that even when you go to America, the people that control the money machine are the white people. And these people, these African immigrants, went there for the dollar. And were it that these are people who knew where they're going and who lives there, then at least that would have changed the whole concept of what we are talking about here. Again, let's also talk about the fact that we have a lot of preconceived concepts of each other. For example, Africans get to be told, or even through the media, they get to learn as the people who are there called African Americans are aggressive people. They are people who deal in drugs. They are, or violent people. They are poor people. All of these are the narratives, the stereotypes that this capitalistic society run by the white supremacists want Africans to believe of the black people in America. And so you're going there with a wrong perception of those people. You see, that can really affect how you're going to relate with those people. And now when we go to the other side of the African Americans, they think of Africa as a wild jungle with very primitive, backward people, people who have never seen infrastructure in their lives, people who are not schooled, and very poor people, people that don't have food. We've come across videos on the internet of some black Americans saying that there's no food in Africa, so once that is, the poison is in between these two people, then these people have a harder time getting along, understandably. So this is why it is very important for us to teach ourselves who we are, how things became as they are today. Because then if we don't challenge the narratives that keep this division here, then we will continue to be divided, but at whose expense? Now, I often say in my channel, while I respect all these people's opinions, those that want to disassociate with Africa, those Africans who think they have no need with the Americanness or America, but there is something about this capitalistic world. In a capitalistic society, someone has to get what they want at the expense of another person. And we have become the people that have been being trodden upon, the steps onto which the palm-coloreds stepped through to achieve all this that they have in this world today. They control the money machine, but we actually are the richest people. Black people are the richest people in all senses of that word, but they don't have the money. They might have the resources, they might have the the energy, the capacity, the talent, but still they are not the people who control the money, because they don't really get full compensation of their talents, their resources, their energy, their capabilities. They don't get full compensation. Someone else actually gets that. Now, it really matters for why we should think on the lines of what is common between us and what is our history, because by then we will at least remove some of this tension and unite as a black people generally. And I will always say unity, black unity, doesn't mean us living together. Doesn't mean all of black people coming back to Africa. No, I don't believe in that personally. But we have a lot of African Americans who move to the continent of Africa, especially those that want nothing to do with, being disconnected with their roots, which is okay. And we have a lot of Africans who moved and kind of permanently stayed in America. But what we need is not living together, is for us to have each other's back so we can become a huge bargaining block. See, we are already a big block, but a big divided block. And it's easy to take advantage of that kind of block if you understand how these things work. So we still rally that we need to find and our differences and our similarities and learn who we really are. And then we can work our differences out and rely on our similarities to at least become a united people who can speak in one black voice for one another, to stand for each, because this unity is not only going to benefit, say, African Americans or Black Americans or Africans alone. No, it's a unity that is purposely there to benefit all of us. So it is really important to understand that. And now, when we go back to the issue of FBA, I understand that if you look at the white people, for example, maybe they also come to they're also immigrants. Technically, everybody in the Americas is an immigrant. It's just how long have you been here? Who has been in that land longer than the other? Even the natives came at some point in time. It is okay that I understand these people ask questions like, how long should we, the FBA, how long should we stay on these lands to be recognized as a people of foundational people of this land? That's really a question that I personally feel like, yeah, because if you look at the white people, that is what I was trying to say. After the third, fourth generations, if someone was an Italian American or a German American, by the time it is the fourth generation, then their roots kind of try to fade, and then they just become Americans. And maybe that is what these FBA people are also looking for, which is okay. But just realize that these people, even though they never call themselves European Americans or Italian Americans, German Americans, is that even though that is not said out loud, but the silent part is always there, and it's guarded jealously. They know where they come from and they protect that. They are always ready to stand with those people that they left over the other side of the world, on the other side of the sea. And if we were also to do that, then it is okay. We can have the FBA living in America, Africans living in Africa, but we know who we are, and we're always ready to say, hey, that's my brother, that's my sister. And simply by doing that, I think we will be a long way from giving these people a chance from which they can undermine, exploit all of us together. Yeah, that is what I had for you in this video. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have something, a conflicting opinion or something you want to add, then you can share with me in the comment section. And if you like the video, then give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, welcome, and hit the subscribe button to be part of us. And until next time, one love and peace out.